We are live. We're starting to get folks joining us. But
Excellent. Well, let me say a quick welcome to everybody. We are doing a sort of spontaneous word on the street live here at 12:30 Eastern on Tuesday. We'll make this conversation available to folks afterwards, and we're going to be emailing it out. So some people will be watching it, and it won't be live, but many of folks are joining us live, and we are reacting to the Tuesday morning Eastern Time news that Israel has struck in Doha, Qatar, the headquarters, or at least a facility being used by Hamas leadership, apparently, potentially, as they were gathering to discuss a ceasefire proposal that had been made by Israel, conferred and conveyed by the White House. And this strike seems to have, we're also getting live information as we speak. This seems to have taken potentially the lives of several top Hamas leaders. We are unclear if that includes the leader of Hamas in Qatar, Khalid Mashal, or the chief negotiator. More details, I'm sure, on that will come. But I'm joined today by our chief policy officer and senior vice president and my partner in all of this, Ilan Goldenberg, who is really our lead on policy matters here at J Street, and also by Frank Lowenstein, who was the special envoy for Middle East peace under Secretary of State Kerry back in the Obama administration. Actually, you guys worked together in that office in that era, and I thought it would really be great to get your take, Elon, just right off the cuff. Share a little bit about what we know at this moment, a few hours in, about the breaking news, and your quick take on this, and then we'll kick it over to Frank.
yeah, sure. So, look, I think, Jeremy, a few things. You kind of outlined, I think, most of what we do know. But I'm kind of looking at a few things. I think the first thing I'm really looking at is like, what are the strategic benefits of this versus the strategic cost, right? And I think we're 2 years into this war almost. Israel has killed numerous Hamas leaders. It hasn't led to anything. It hasn't led to the end of the war because there is no strategy for ending the war or actually replacing Hamas, other than like killing senior leadership, and then you just play whack-a-mole and new senior leadership pops up. But even more profoundly, I think in terms of the current, dynamics and what it signals is that there's no interest in a deal coming from Israel right now or from the Netanyahu government, and you've just really, literally blown up negotiations for the foreseeable future. It's just really hard to see how we go from here to a situation where you get the hostages out anytime soon, where you can avoid this major operation that has started in Gaza. And so basically what this is signaling is like full speed ahead for, the next round of fighting in Gaza and for more risk of lives to the hostages and suffering for Palestinian civilians. Is kind
Right.
of
I
my
mean, just this
initial.
morning, I think that they issued the full evacuation order for all of Gaza City, and the leaflets were dropped on what was estimated to potentially be up to 1 million people who have been living in Gaza City because there haven't been a lot of other places where one could live. And now all of those folks are going to have to relocate to the south. Estimates are that a couple 100,000 may stay in Gaza City even as this invasion launches. So we're really clearly crossed any line at this point. Israel is all in, full speed ahead with the invasion.
Yeah, and I'm interested, like we were also talking before, so maybe like we'll kick it over to Frank, but also there's real profound implications for, the US role, in terms of us as a negotiator, as well as just relationships with the GCC and other things. But Frank, interested to get your take, especially since you've negotiated with the Qataris as mediators with Hamas and during some of the previous Israel-Gaza wars.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks very much for having me. You're quite right on, and you were around for this as well. In 2014, Secretary Kerry was involved in very intense negotiations between the Israelis and Hamas to try to find a ceasefire to that war. And the Qataris played an absolutely essential role in all of that. And we spoke to them from time to time, like, "Hey, why are you?" Kerry would ask them, "Why are you representing these guys?" The Qatari foreign minister effectively said, "Look, if we don't, who will?" And if nobody will represent them, how are we ever supposed to have any kind of a negotiations? And that's, I think, where we find ourselves now. I think if you look back on this, Israel was never serious about a ceasefire. Netanyahu was never serious about a ceasefire. The latest offer from Witkoff was for Hamas to effectively surrender, right? You give up all the hostages up front, your last sort of leverage, and then from there we'll have some kind of a negotiation on an end game. But we already know from the January negotiations that Netanyahu never would have followed through on the serious negotiations on the end game. So in effect, they were just asking Hamas to give up everything up front. So it wasn't a serious offer to try to end the war. And I think it suggests the position we now find ourselves in, which is the United States is foursquare behind an Israeli military campaign in Gaza that seems to have the ultimate objective of driving all of the Palestinians into the southern part of the country and then trying to force them out in general. And that obviously we've had some hopes along the way that President Trump might play a role. He obviously wants to get the hostages out and he wants to be the great deal maker. But we've shown now with our actions that we can't be trusted. And Ilan mentioned this at the top, but I think it's really important to stress they were meeting to discuss Witkoff's ceasefire proposal. Right at the time, the Israelis targeted them with our knowledge inside of Qatar. So the United States now has not only do we have clear intentions by the Israelis to follow through on this grand plan of effectively ethnic cleansing in Gaza Strip, which they're also doing in parallel in the West Bank, but we also have no mechanism to even try to negotiate a ceasefire any longer. No one will ever trust the United States again, right? I don't know if the Qataris would be willing to even play any role in all this, whether Hamas will ever take any of those talks seriously. So it's a sort of disaster for the United States on two very basic levels. The first is that we are now behind a war that's going to involve appalling civilian casualties and likely result in an effort to violate international law by driving them all out of the country. And second of all, there's now no longer a path forward to try to resolve this war peacefully with any role of the United States. So just as a threshold matter, it's a huge setback for anybody who cared about the lives of the hostages, wanted to see this war end, and valued the role that the United States can play, which has been an essential one over the years, diplomatically, not only in Gaza, but I would argue we have no credibility in any negotiations anywhere at this point in time. So yeah, not a good day for the United States here, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, Frank, you were saying before we came on, you were making the point that, like, look, we are deep in negotiations with Iran, and suddenly the U.S. supports Israel taking strikes to, start a war with Iran and take out Iran's nuclear program. We are deep in negotiations here, and yeah, the second I saw this, I knew that the U.S. obviously had to have had at least given the okay on this. And Jeremy, you and I were talking about whether or not, love your, you can get your take on whether or not, this was the entire point of the proposal was actually to like draw these folks in and conduct this strike. But at a minimum, like I knew immediately that we have a major air base in Qatar in in the in Al Udeid. There's no way this happened without American at least approval, if not full on collaboration in advance.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the questions that will obviously come out over time, we won't know it in the first few hours here, but how much of this whole process over this last week was potentially a trap? How much of it was a ruse in order to get those Hamas leaders into the same room so that they could be taken out? And I just think that the lure of diplomacy as a potential trap in order to kill the people that you were negotiating with is about as low as one can possibly go. And I will note that the Hostage Family Forum, did not support this. If we are putting the lives of Israeli hostages front and center, and that is and should be the highest priority of the government of Israel, it clearly is the absolute last priority. And we've seen that over the course of these 2 years that the hostages are not priority number one for this government. But a move like this, when you are theoretically at the last gasp chance to save the lives of these hostages, clearly proves that this was not this government just has absolutely no interest in bringing the hostages home alive.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I just think is pretty profound in all of this, like that kind of blew my mind, and I'm interested in your all's take on is, you know, like Qatar is, a GCC country. Like in
And
broad,
GCC is the Gulf Coordinating
yes,
Council. For those who are
Gulf
joining us who
Cooperation
don't know
Council.
the initials. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is the Gulf states. Like there's not a lot of love between Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar. I mean, but at the same time, like the precedent of Israel, like in broad daylight, with the support of the United States, like launching strikes like on GCC territory, like in this way, is something that if I'm the Saudis and if I'm the Emiratis, I am not happy about, right? And we talk about opportunities for normalization and cooperation. We have the Abraham Accords. We have this whole, as J Street, we always talk about the possibility of the 23-state solution. Um, I can't imagine any of these countries are happy today or are really all that interested in coordinating with the Israelis right now. A lot of times when Israel does something, especially against Iran and some of the Arab states publicly condemn it, and then privately they're kind of like, well, not so bad. Like that's not the case today. Like there is no way I imagine any of these countries are happy with the idea of a country like Qatar with a major American base, which, oh, by the way, like part of the point of having an American base on your territory is security from outside forces, not just coming in and blowing stuff up. That is part of like the guarantee we kind of provide just implicitly by being there. And then us just giving this green light. I mean, it's crazy if you're Qatar and if you're Saudi and UAE, like I just don't know what you're thinking right now or the others. But Frank, I don't know like your take on that or just generally, Um
Yeah, and those are all very good points, and I think it really will serve to sideline the United States now from any meaningful diplomacy, not only in the region, but as I said before, probably all around the world. And that is that really does make the situation even more dangerous than it was before. They're the only person that Trump might listen to end this war and get the hostages back was Donald Trump. And Trump has been talking out of both sides of his mouth on that, but there were some moments where he credibly appeared to be interested in a deal, even if it was only for his own personal narrative of being a peacemaker and a hostage releaser and that kind of thing. That's all gone now. Right. I don't know that anybody will ever do business with the Trump administration again, on the basis of any trust at all. And honestly, I think that we are now very clearly being driven by Israeli extremists right over the cliff. The United States is, I think, denying Abbas a visa to the UN General Assembly. Even though there's a UN headquarters agreement that requires the United States as the host to issue visas to heads of state. That happened right after Rubio met with Gideon Saar. And obviously, it was a request from the Israelis. And so, at this point, it's very discouraging among all the other issues there that the United States no longer seems to have our own interests at heart when we're making policy. Now we're doing whatever the Israelis want. And what the Israelis want is really what Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich and Netanyahu want to do. So in effect, the policy of the United States and the prospects for peace in the region is being dictated by two of the most extreme messianic religious extremists who've ever served in any government ever. And that's a horrible place for the United States of America to be. And I think you're hearing this now, not only from the left, but also from the right. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson gave a long interview on this yesterday. It's like, what happened to America first? What happened to the United States staying out of these foreign wars? Now, not only are we going to give the Israelis opportunity to do whatever they want, but we're giving them cover to do it with this Gaza Riviera plan, which should have been a throwaway comment that nobody. And now they're following up with the PowerPoint presentation of selling kind of timeshares in luxury hotels in Gaza. It's an insane plan, and it just further shows that the United States is not serious about doing what's in the interest of the United States. We seem to be doing only what the Israelis, and in this case, a very small group of Israeli extremists want us to do. And that's a very, very difficult place for the United States of America to be. I'm hoping that Trump will see that getting sort of bullied around by Netanyahu like this is not in his personal interest, because I think that's all he really cares about. But right now, it feels like everything's getting dictated by Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and it's taken Israel off the cliff and the United States right along with them.
Yeah, and I would just add in, by the way, I see that there are a few people in the comments who would obviously fall into the category of those who will be celebrating today, right? And thinking that any time that you can take a shot at somebody and you actually succeed, that's a positive thing. And that will be the reaction on the right of the American Jewish community. There will be this sense of what a brilliant tactical move or whatever. But the long run, the stupidity, the lack of a strategic vision, where are we headed over the course of the next weeks and months, right? This offensive is moving forward in September and October. Hundreds of thousands of people are going to be driven to the south. Every day, another 100 people are dying. Half a dozen to a dozen are dying of starvation. We are seeing now over 10% of the civilian population of Gaza has either been killed or injured in this war. And we're about to take it to a whole nother level. And where is the American Jewish community on this? I know there's a handful of people who will be very excited if a top leader of Hamas is dead today. But when the bodies of the hostages, all of them are found to be dead, and you come home with nothing for all of this, and the world regards you as a pariah state, and the Jewish community here is split, and grandchildren won't talk to their grandparents anymore. What has this done for the Jewish people and for the state of Israel? I think the weeks and months ahead are going to be very, very dark for this issue, and this today's strike is just a nail in that coffin, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Sorry, please on.
sure. I was just gonna say on this, like, Jeremy, look, coming into today, what I thought was gonna happen was Hamas was gonna reject this proposal from the Trump administration that was, like, frankly, like a step back in the wrong direction, was not a credible proposal. I never thought it had a chance because it asked for all the hostages up front without actually guaranteeing an end to the war. Um, and then Israel and the US would use that as the justification for going in, but at least the Israelis would make the case, and it would have some impact, that like we accepted an American offer, Hamas didn't, and so we're going ahead. Like at least I could see that play, right? Even if I didn't necessarily agree with it, putting yourself at least on the diplomatic front foot. But now they've put themselves on the absolute diplomatic back foot. Like they are clearly the aggressor who has now started this latest round and killed, the negotiations. The whole world is going to blame them for that. And for what? Like, congratulations, you took out a couple more leaders, and new leaders will pop up. And so I just think from a pure strategic play, it's even if you're Bibi Netanyahu, like this does not make sense to me. Like take away like my view that things should be different from a pure if I had Netanyahu's mentality and Netanyahu's approach to the world, um, and I was like, I don't care about the hostages. Like we want to go in, even if that is your objective. This is a stupid thing to do, if you ask me. Like and that's so
Yeah,
that's
just
it's
just to
just
just
really
to
makes
build on
sense.
that, Ilan, what I think it suggests is that inside of Israel right now, there are no breaks, no constraints, no limitations on Netanyahu's freedom of action. And the old adage, if you have a big enough hammer, everything starts to look like a nail, really holds true here. I just think that their military and their intel services can take care of all their problems by basically just killing all of their enemies. And there's just no way that's a sustainable strategy over time. But I also really want to highlight how the Gaza war fits into the overall context of what the Netanyahu government is doing in the West Bank as well.
Yeah.
I don't think people have focused anywhere near enough on this because, obviously there's such a disaster in Gaza that consumes all the attention. But there are effectively wide-scale pogroms going on in the West Bank on a daily basis with violent Jewish settlers kicking Palestinians off their land, in some cases that they've lived on for generations. There's been 1,000 Palestinians killed in the West Bank this year. There's been literally hundreds of attacks by violent settlers, all with the IDF tacitly looking on. The Palestinian Authority, according to the IDF, is on the verge of collapse now. And I think that's what they want. As Feiner said, I think very, very rightly, we were closer to starting another war in the West Bank than they are to ending the one in Gaza Strip right now. And I just feel like in the midst of all of the horrible things that are happening, people can't avert their glance from what's going on in the West Bank. And for those who would say, hey, Israel's justified in killing Hamas leaders. Okay, but this was not the right time to do that in any event. But really, the question is, how does that mentality fit with what's going on in the West Bank right now? These are not defensive operations in the West Bank. They are offensive operations designed to realize this vision of a greater Israel free of Palestinians. And honestly, at the rate they're going, they're going to clear out certainly the northern half of Gaza, right? And they may very well annex it. They may build settlements there. But they're talking actively about annexation in the West Bank right now. Smotrich put out a plan to annex the whole thing, basically, other
Right.
than Areas A and B. And you should expect that that's the kind of thing that's going to happen right now the most extreme government in the history of Israel, without any brakes on it whatsoever. The United States going along for the ride, supporting them openly or at least tacitly in all of this. They will continue to go here. And at the end of this, in 6 months, 9 months, in a year, you're going to have a situation where the Palestinians are basically living in small corners of Gaza Strip and the West Bank. You're going to have a permanent Israeli military occupation and an apartheid state, and not only in the West Bank, but in Gaza Strip as well. And I just have a really hard time understanding how that is in the best interest of the United States, and how, as the president of the United States, you can't see that the Israelis, that this small cabal of messianic extremists is leading us on a road to ruin here. And I think that's what everybody needs to sort of understand about the bigger context here.
So we are actually going to wrap this up relatively soon. We wanted to just do a quick live update for our Word on the Street and J Street followers and give you a sense of what our reactions were to the strike this morning by Israel on Doha, Qatar. We're joined by Frank Lowenstein, who was Special Envoy for Middle East Peace under Secretary Kerry in the Obama years, and of course, Ilan Goldenberg, our Chief Policy Officer. And I'm going to turn back to you for some final thoughts. But Frank, I just want to pick up. You mentioned what is the United States thinking, what is the president thinking? I mean, this is a president who is just blowing up every norm of American foreign policy that we have known in our lifetimes and since World War II. And so, I don't think there is quote unquote thinking and strategy. The idea that you just sort of start blowing up vessels off of Venezuela because you think there might be drug dealers on board and you have the right to just blow them up. This is what this administration is. This is what it's turning the United States into. My hope is that the rest of the world doesn't mistake the American people and the nature of this country for this regime. It's the same case that I make about Israel, that I hope that people will not mistake the Israeli people and what they are and who they are for this leadership.
Frank, Jeremy, yeah, I can't hear you either. Jeremy, I think you might have gone
Jeremy,
mute.
you lost audio.
Jeremy, can you hear us?
Yeah, unfortunately, I got an incoming call. One of the things that are is a risk doing these things live, right? Is that you get an incoming call. So my apologies for that. But let me turn it back to you, Ilan. I don't want to repeat what I said already, and I'll turn it to you for some closing thoughts, and then back to Frank.
We'll just assume it was brilliant impression as always, Jeremy, and we'll go on to Ilan.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I just had to summarize it, as basically these Hamas guys are bad guys. Nobody thinks otherwise. But this strategically just made zero sense for Israel. It endangers the hostages. It puts essentially ends diplomatic negotiations. It guarantees that this war is going to go on. It frankly freaks out, I think, the Gulf states and Qatar, but also Saudi Arabia and the UAE. It fundamentally undermines the U.S. position in the world as a mediator and negotiator. And as Israel goes into this next phase, it is now going into this next phase in the worst possible international position you could imagine. All for what? For nothing, because Hamas will just find new leaders and will continue because there's no actual strategy for defeating Hamas. So if I had to wrap it all up, that's what I would say. Frank, over to you.
I'm happy to leave it right there.
All right. Well, thanks to both Frank Lowenstein and Ilan Goldenberg for joining us on this Word on the Street Live. I was trying to get across before just what an important moment this is for the Jewish people as well as for the state of Israel, and that the movement in this direction under Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and Netanyahu is not just simply a strategic threat to the state of Israel, but I think has vast implications for the Jewish people in the United States and around the world. And I think it's incumbent on our organizations and our leadership here to be speaking out more loudly on this, not just as a matter of American foreign policy and national interest, but as a matter of our own communal self-interest. And I think that is a place where we'll leave it. Lots more to be said. Thank you for joining us on Word on the Street Live. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. Ilan, you'll be, I think, chatting with Randi Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, about her new book about fascism, which relates to the challenges we have on the democracy front here in the U.S. And I'm sure you'll be relating that to Israel as well.
For sure. And, Randi's very invested in our issues as well. So I'll be talking about that too. So
Terrific.
thanks everybody for joining us.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.